In the last couple of episodes, we've met two early travelers along the Hominin River. One, the Auroran tugenensis, left its footprints on the river's banks. At least we think those prints were left by the tugenensis. The age of the prints does fit in with the time that they walked the earth. At least, we're pretty sure they walked. Before them were the Sahelanthropus chidensis. Now, we're not positive they walked, but they may have. We can't even say for certainty that they walked along the Hominin River at all. Did they sit down and disappear before reaching the river, or did they drift down a tributary? Why do we know so little? It's because all we have are armloads of bones to piece it all together. Bones do tell a lot. They tell us things like eating habits, brain size, if they climbed trees, did they spend most of their day in the branches, and also if they occasionally ventured down from those heights to spend time on the ground. It can be frustrating and also eye-opening what we can learn from bones. It's why we keep searching for them. We need more to enrich in the story of our ancestors, to bring them back to life in a sense. As we look back along the Hominin River, we do catch glimpses of them. Some are shadows shrouded in mist, and others slip in and out of view, like the Neanderthal. They're right behind us on the Hominin River, and just when we think we'll get to learn more about them, another fog rolls in. Now, if all of this interests you, well, maybe you'll pick up a shovel, slip your canoe into the river, and travel back to find them. We need people like you. In the meantime, we'll look at the bones that we do have for clues. And in today's episode, we'll sift through some more that were found in Ethiopia. Again, we don't have many, and there are gaps to fill, but it doesn't make it any less fascinating. Let's meet today's denizen of the Hominin River.
There is grandeur in this view of life.
Welcome to Evolution Talk with Rick Coast, an introduction to the oldest story ever told.
Five and a half million years ago, a traveler along the Hominin River died. He was small, he had short legs and relatively long arms. His hips and legs were strong enough to support his weight when he wasn't in the trees. He spent a lot of time in the trees. He liked to climb. His long arms and strong curved fingers, as well as his elevated shoulder joint, made it easy for him to pull himself up into the safety of those branches. Once in the trees, he could rest and survey the landscape. If he spotted a predator, well, he'd remain still until the danger passed. But to pass the time, he would chew on the leaves around him or hop down to explore the ground for nuts. It was a quiet life, when predators weren't around, that is. He'd explore the forest and occasionally venture to a nearby lake for water. There was a river nearby as well. The river meant something to him, but he couldn't understand what it was. It stretched far off into the future. And then, one day, he didn't feel so well. He closed his eyes to escape the pain and never opened them again. Five and a half million years later, another animal, this one a traveler from a group known as Homo sapiens, stumbled across a bone. It was a portion of a lower jaw. It was small and broad and suggested an animal he'd never seen before. It reminded him of another one from the species known as Sahelanthropus chidensis, but it was different enough that he began to look for more. This man's name is Johannes Haile Selassie. He is a paleoanthropologist and was exploring the Middle Awash region in Ethiopia. Now, what he'd stumbled upon 5.5 million years after it died were the bones of that little creature who closed his eyes to escape the pain. Haile Selassie found more bones, not all from the same individual, but 5 others. Granted, there weren't a lot, but it was enough to tell a story. one that was different from any other he'd heard or seen before. What he'd collected were fragments of a forearm, a couple of finger bones, a piece of clavicle, and a few kilometers away, a toe bone that was eventually dated to roughly the same time period. Now, Haile Selassie found these fossils in 1997, and he still wasn't certain what species they represented. 5 years later, in 2002, 6 teeth were found in the same region. Again, dated to the same time period as the fossil evidence collected in 1997, that being the late Miocene/early Pliocene epochs. 2 years later, Haile Selassie, along with American paleoanthropologist Tim White and Japanese paleoanthropologist Gen Sua, revealed what their research and analysis pointed to. The fossil fragments belonged to a new species not yet discovered. They named it Ardipithecus kadabba. Ardi means ground, and Pithecus is ape. Kadabba is from the Afar language and can be translated as oldest ancestor. The bones tell a tale. And here's what we know. The little hominin they belonged to was not much different in size to that of today's chimpanzee, but it's certainly not a chimpanzee's ancestor. While their forearms are a mix of ape-like and human-like traits, their elbow is decidedly ape-like. The kadabba's dental morphology, though, point to a more human-like ancestor, specifically the canines. Now, perhaps the most interesting bone is that of the toe found a few kilometers away. It appears to be the fourth toe, which is right next to the pinky toe if you count from your big toe. It's broad and suggested that perhaps they had the ability to push off as if they were walking. So, if this toe bone, which is 5.2 million years old, belongs to the Ardipithecus kadabba, then they were, in fact, bipedal. Questions, as always, abound. The exciting part of paleoanthropology is you never know when or in what form the next discovery will be. Will it support what we now think about the Hominin River, or will it change the course we thought it took to get to us? Will it reveal another traveler and another tributary, or will we find that what we thought was a tributary was only a meander? So, where does Ardipithecus kadabba fit in? It's a valid question. Does it represent an actual direct human ancestor as Haile Selassie thinks, and also the oldest one to be found? Was it the first to travel down the Hominin River? If so, where does that leave the Auroran and the Sahelanthropus? They too are contenders for the earliest ancestor crown. Or, perhaps, there's always an or. Here's a thought. Maybe Ardipithecus, Auroran, and Sahelanthropus all belong together under the same genus and not separate. Well, in the next episode, we will meet another member of the Ardipithecus genus known as Ardipithecus ramidus. Ardipithecus ramidus was discovered by Tim White in the early 1990s, and it could very well be that Ardipithecus kadabba is an early form of ramidus. They share many of the same features, with those of kadabba being slightly more ape-like than we see in ramidus. Then again, we might have it all wrong. In the last episode, when discussing the Auroran, it was suggested that they were a direct ancestor of modern humans and that the Australopithecine is a separate tributary. What if that's wrong, and the Australopithecine descended from Ardipithecus? You see what I mean? There are so many paths these discoveries lead us down. The only way to get to the bottom of it is to keep digging, keep discovering, and to enlist the help of the next generation of paleoanthropologists waiting to take over. And to those future paleoanthropologists, we really can't wait to see what you find. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Evolution Talk. I'm Rick Coast, and if you find value in this show, and I really hope you do, please consider supporting it at evolutiontalk.com. This show needs your help. I still have a lot of plans for it, and I can only do so with your assistance. Share the show with your friends, and at evolutiontalk.com you'll find more information, some recommended books and reading materials, and also ways to contact me. I'd love to hear from you. I hope your week is going well, and until next time, please take care of yourself.
Evolution Talk is a Rick Coast production.